Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
Now let's turn to politics and Jeremy Corbyn's call for a newer kind of politics. Instead, he's now involved in a very old kind of row. The Labour leader has been criticised for nominating the human rights campaigner Shami Chakrabarti for a peerage. The chief rabbi, Ephraim Miravis, says her report into anti-Semitism in the Labour Party now lies in tatters. Well, a little earlier today, we spoke with the chairman of the Home Affairs Select Committee, Keith Vaz. He told us he didn't believe that Shami Chakrabarti should have accepted that nomination.
She's very suitably qualified to be either in the Commons or the Lords. I preferred for her to be with me in the House of Commons. She would have done a fantastic job. The issue is this. If she was conducting an independent inquiry into anti-Semitism for the Labour Party, if she was offered a peerage before she conducted that inquiry, during or immediately after, or at the time when Mr Corbyn gave evidence to our committee, when she was in the committee room, passing him notes, that is important to the committee in terms of the independence of the report.
Let's speak now to Sky's chief political correspondent, John Craig, who's in duty in Westminster for us this afternoon. John, you heard Keith Vaz there talking about that session of the Home Affairs Committee in which Shami Chakrabarti was, in essence, acting as an advisor to Jeremy Corbyn. Explain in a little bit more depth why people are starting to get quite annoyed about this appointment.
Well, lots of reasons, really. First of all, Mr Corbyn has said over the past year or so he wasn't going to nominate anyone for any sorts of honours, whether it's knighthoods for Labour backbenchers or sending ex-ministers to the House of Lords and so on. And yet here we have him nominating Shami Chakrabarti, who only joined the Labour Party when she was asked to do this anti-Semitism inquiry. That was in late April. Now, the meeting that Mr Vaz refers to was when the Home Affairs Select Committee, which is conducting its own inquiry into anti-Semitism, called Mr Corbyn, and he gave evidence there. At that point, Shami Chakrabarti was, as he says, passing notes to the Labour leader as he answered questions from the MPs. That was the 4th of July. Now, a couple of weeks later, Shami Chakrabarti was interviewed by the Jewish Chronicle in a televised interview by that publication. 20th of July, she was very coy about whether she'd been offered a peerage. It looks as though now that she probably had been offered it at that point. And that's why Keith Vaz and indeed others want to know about when she was offered the inquiry, because the report was condemned by Jewish groups as a whitewash. Didn't criticise the likes of Ken Livingstone, who was criticised by many Labour MPs for some of his comments, and it was roundly condemned, the Shami Chakrabarti report. And so the Jewish the Board of Deputies of British Jews are today saying it's a whitewash for peerages scandal. Mr Corbyn is being accused of hypocrisy. I spoke this afternoon to Tom Watson, Labour's deputy leader. He doesn't know when, he says, that Mr Corbyn offered this peerage. He'd like to know as well. He says Mr Vaz is quite right to raise it. So Shami Chakrabarti is this afternoon facing some pretty serious questions about when she was offered this peerage. As Mr Vaz says, was it before the inquiry? Well, that was set up in April. Was it whilst it was going on? Was it immediately afterwards, as Mr Vaz says? It all, to many MPs, sounds a little bit strange that here you have somebody who joins the Labour Party, does a report, it's condemned as a whitewash, and hey-ho, she gets a peerage.
And there are more questions over the honours list and Jeremy Corbyn's decision to nominate the head of Labour's anti-Semitism inquiry to the House of Lords. Well, let's get more on that story. The former Prime Minister has been accused of cronyism. The Labour leader is now facing in-party fighting following his decision to nominate Shami Chakrabarti for a peerage. Just in the past few minutes, we've actually heard from the Labour leader on this topic.
Shami Chakrabarti was Director of Liberty for a very long time. She's an absolutely brilliant, fiercely independent lawyer who stands up for human rights, justice and civil liberties, not just in the UK, but all around the world. She's an internationally renowned lawyer, and she will make a great contribution to the House of Lords for two reasons. One, she's a brilliant lawyer who will bring those skills to the House of Lords, and secondly, she's committed to the abolition of the House of Lords and replacement with a democratically elected assembly. Otherwise, I wouldn't have dreamt of supporting her nomination. Thank you. Thank you. Thanks.
Well, joining us now from Westminster is the former advisor to David Cameron, Alex Dean, and vlogger and co-founder of Novara Media, Aaron Bastani. Thanks both for joining us. Aaron, to you first. Well, if Mr Corbyn wanted to take the spotlight off David Cameron, he couldn't have come up with a better strategy, could he?
I mean, I would disagree with that. Shami Chakrabarti is an outstanding candidate. She brings a great deal of expertise to the role. I personally agree with Mr Corbyn that the House of Lords, the second chamber, should be elected. Notwithstanding that, if it is to be an assembly of unelected decision makers, there should be experts. Shami is a world-class individual at what she does. She has a track record of real achievement. She's a BME woman. We need more of those in public life. In terms of the candidacy and the ire it's drawn from the Parliamentary Labour Party, look, I think that would have happened with any selection Corbyn would have made.
No one, Mr Bastani, but no one is disputing the CV of Shami Chakrabarti. It's the timing, isn't it, that's an issue? And that raises questions which have been raised before, about the ability of the Labour leader's office to deal with stories such as this.
Again, I would just dispute that. I think whoever had been selected, look, you've got 172 MPs who don't have confidence in the leadership of Jeremy Corbyn. Many of those are working night and day to sabotage his leadership. So I think whoever he'd selected, I think this would have been an issue. Shami Chakrabarti has a CBE. She was offered a peerage several times before. She's now saying, well, I'm willing to be a peer, I'm willing to take this role, firstly because of the unique political moment post-Brexit, the human rights implications of that. Secondly, because she agrees with the emphasis on human rights placed by Jeremy Corbyn in terms of where Britain goes next, how it deals with Brexit, how it deals with leaving the EU and human rights reform, a bill of human rights in Britain.
Alex Dean, the PLP would have kicked up a fuss no matter who Jeremy Corbyn nominated. Nothing to see here, move along.
Well, I don't know about that, but look, I mean, I'm a Conservative. Nevertheless, I made the case in an article in the last Parliament for Shami Chakrabarti to be made a peer because of the undoubted qualities that have just been discussed. But the timing is appalling, isn't it? It appears that she has received a peerage in return for undertaking this inquiry. And that's not just actually a timing point, it's also a significant professional and ethical issue. Shami Chakrabarti, just like me, is a non-practicing barrister, and she has upon her, as I do, the ethical obligations from the Bar Council and the Bar Standards Board not to bring the administration of justice into dispute and not to undertake a quasi-judicial role in return for a personal reward. That is, on the face of it, what she has done. So it's not just a timing issue, and I don't say this lightly, Neil, but it seems to me that the Bar Council's been probably the Bar Standards Board too.
Well, as we were just listening to Alex Dean there, we're just bringing you pictures of the Labour leader Jeremy Corbyn out on the stump in Merthyr Tydfil, I believe, speaking again to lots of people. Let's go back to the discussion we were having with Aaron and Alex. Aaron, just to pick up on what Alex was saying there, even if we don't, even if we assume good faith, even if we assume that Shami Chakrabarti approached that investigation into anti-Semitism within the Labour Party with an entirely straight bat, it's the timing of it. It's the timing of it that raises questions about the judgment of Jeremy Corbyn and other people, because even if there is nothing wrong with this particular appointment, it doesn't look right on the surface. It fails that all-important smell test when it comes to politics.
Again, I think your viewers will have to take a personal view on this. For me, if this was to happen next year, the year after, 3 years,
but
5
that's the point.
years...
It hasn't happened next year.
Hold on.
It hasn't happened 2 years after that. It has happened in the immediate aftermath of a report which has been roundly criticised by the British Jewish community.
It hasn't been roundly criticised, actually. There are many stakeholders. No, it hasn't. Judas, Jewish Socialist Group. I know many Jewish people, both in and outside the Labour Party, who thought it was an excellent report, actually. So let's not ventriloquise them here, because neither of us are representing the Jewish community. What we should emphasise...
Yeah, forgive me, sorry, Aaron. You don't have to represent the Jewish community to be able to listen to them. And the British Board of Deputy British Board of Jews described this appointment as deeply disappointing. In fact, they described it as beyond.
He referred to the report.
Yeah,
he was referring to the report, though.
I'm sorry.
He was just referring to the report and the fact that it was a lacklustre report. I disagree with that. I think a lot of stakeholders thought it was a very good report, very strong report. I was one of them.
I don't think that's right. I think they were referring to the appointment. But in any case, and I also want to dispute the idea that Neil's just suggested, that this only reflects on Jeremy Corbyn's judgment. I'm afraid, and I say this as an admirer of Shami Chakrabarty's, who thinks for other reasons she should be in the House of Lords. I think that this also reflects on Shami Chakrabarty's judgment. I think it's a disaster for civil liberties when its foremost champion in this country is seen as being tarnished in this way. And I think it's very, very bad for professional campaigners and for public interest campaigners when someone can say to them with legitimacy, oh, are you really saying that? Do you really believe it? Or are you saying it because you're going to get a peerage?
Aaron Bastani, it would be easy for us to forget, and indeed many of the right-leaning newspapers appear to have done so, that of course the whole start of the criticism over honours in the past few days was directed at one man and one man only, David Cameron, and the awards that he's been dishing out like sweeties to his nearest and dearest during his time at number 10.
Yeah, I mean, the numbers are really phenomenal. These are really recommendations, but I think it's something like 20 current and former special advisors are in there. I think dozens of people involved in the Remain campaign are involved. Will Straw, who's got a CBE, Will Straw, failed parliamentary candidate, failed with the Britain Stronger in Europe campaign. He was the #1, the top guy for that. And he's been rewarded for failure. I mean, the guy's big achievement, this sounds rude, but I mean, it seems self-evident, is that he's Jack Straw's son. And yeah, that honours list in particular betokened for me the failure really of David Cameron to come good on a different kind of politics, but also just how broken British politics is right now.
Alex Dean, I mean, do we need to look at reforming resignation honours? I mean, to many people
Yes.
who are not directly involved in politics, despite the fact that we all know that Prime Ministers have used these resignation honours lists to hand out awards to their friends since time immemorial.
No,
the general
Neil,
public is not as aware of that as we are.
I don't think it's just resignation honours lists. I think it's the honours system per se. And I think that we need to revisit the whole process, especially of nominations for the upper house. Putting other honours to one side, you know, nice to have letters after your name if you like that sort of thing. But appointing people to the legislature when you yourself are the head of the executive, even on an outgoing basis, the head of the executive and serving in the legislature, seems to me to be wholly wrong. The ability to pack the upper house of our parliament from the lower house with people that you like cannot be right. And I think we've got to revisit that per se. It doesn't necessarily mean you have to have an elected upper house. Perhaps we need to have a Lords Appointment Committee that services the appointment of people in the same way that we have a Judicial Appointments Committee that oversees the appointment of judges. But what can't be right is that we are able to appoint people that make law on the whim or will of those in and around number 10. That's not a party political point, it's a simple point of principle around which I think many people can rally.
Aaron Bastani, why do you think that Jeremy Corbyn said that he didn't want to nominate people to the upper house and then changed his mind?
I think he said explicitly he didn't want to do it, and I think he has changed his mind because, you know, in politics it's about expediency. Where are we after Brexit? We are in a changed political terrain. We are in a
one extra Labour peer is not going to change the balance of power there. Jeremy Corbyn pledged to appoint no peers.
Yeah,
Why has he changed his mind?
I don't think it's in his power to change the balance of power in the House of Lords. What he can do is nominate experts, as many as possible, to foster a more intelligent and a more progressive debate about what happens with EU nationals in resident Britain right now. In regards to what happens around the ECHR, are we going to now negotiate this? Are we going to leave that? In regards to what happens and the human rights implications of leaving the EU, these are big questions to be answered, right? It's not just trade renegotiations.
Yeah, I agree with that, sort of. I mean, I'm not a Labour Party member, but I think that the Corbyn movement, strong as it is in the country, should be reflected more in the House of Lords, just in the same way that I think the Green movement, even though I'm not a Green, should be represented more in the House of Lords. Equally, UKIP, I'm not a UKIPper, Nigel Farage should be in the House of Lords. But what I don't think is right is immediately after concluding an inquiry, someone gets given a peerage. The trouble with that is it looks like quid pro quo, doesn't it? It feels like, you know, we had cash for questions a while ago, and now it looks like you can have whitewash inquiry for peerage.
Alex Dean, Aaron Bastani, thank you both very much for joining us in Sky News this afternoon.